All right, so there's a massive YouTuber with millions of followers. His name is wilbursoot, and he has been recently exposed by his ex-girlfriend, Shelby Shubble, or Shubble, and she's basically claiming that he is an abuser, that he was abusive. And from what I've seen of her allegations, she's essentially insinuating that he's pretty much a sadist. And if you don't know what a sadist is somebody that derives pleasure from inflicting pain on other people, amongst other things. And generally, I don't even really cover these kinds of things. It's not really something that I'm interested in. However, one thing I will say is that there have been so many allegations against internet personalities, streamers, YouTubers, influencers in this space for such a long time. And generally, it follows the theme of, a much smaller creator or someone with a much smaller following guessing with somebody with a much bigger following, with a lot more influence, with a lot more followers. And ultimately, they're somewhat taken advantage of. However, what's different about this is that Shubble, at the point that she's making these allegations, she's 30 years old. So this is a mature woman that has gotten with a younger creator or a younger internet personality, wilbursoot. And in her allegations, in the way that she has presented her allegations, she's done it in a very succinct manner in comparison to a lot of these other girls. And she's basically provided a list of all of the things that he has done that are incredibly reprehensible. And she's gone into an amount of detail with all of these allegations that makes it really easy to follow up on this and to actually have a conversation about what is going on here and what to make of it. So these allegations from Shubble against wilbursoot included mental abuse, physical abuse, and even financial abuse. And bear in mind, this is a year after the relationship has already ended. And she never actually mentioned Wilbur's name. But interestingly enough, he then came out with an X post or a Twitter post later on, essentially confirming to everybody that it was him that she was referring to, and essentially somewhat giving some pseudo apology for the allegations that she made against him. So the primary allegation from Shubble was that Wilbur was essentially excessively biting her. And so I call Wilbur's apology a pseudo apology because even though he did express guilt and remorse for the way that Shubble was feeling and the allegations that she had made, he essentially insinuated that he had evidence to disprove some of those allegations, claiming that she had consented to that behavior. And I guess that was technically in contention to some of the allegations that Shubble made. And there was a lot of backlash and there was a lot of negative responses to this apology because it didn't necessarily seem entirely sincere. Wilbur technically never even mentioned Shubble's name in the apology. It seemed almost somewhat of a PR response to defend your name or defend your reputation against allegations. He never actually released any of this evidence that he claims he possesses that would show that Shubble consented to this biting. And what angers people the most, especially women, and this is even a reason why I'm not so motivated to cover topics like this, is because essentially there's the idea that 3 months from now, this will all be a distant memory. Wilbur's fans will be Wilbur's fans, and they're going to support him in whatever he chooses to do moving on from this, essentially as if he would have gotten away with this. And that's kind of just how the game goes. But I will say, at least from my own personal experience, this is the first time that we have gotten a detailed, well-explained, concise summarization of unacceptable behavior, reprehensible behavior from a creator that is essentially manipulating their authority or their influence within a relationship to a degree that is unacceptable. And I think that there is a possibility that there are girls that are going to see this in the future that might be deterred from getting into a similar situation. So that is some good that potentially could come from all of this. So that is something that I do want to highlight. I want people to be aware of that at the very least. I think it's important to talk about the dynamics of a relationship like this, and it also give me the opportunity to give you somewhat of a background into this situation. So wilbursoot, he is a 27-year-old English dude from Suffolk, England. And I bet you've never heard of Suffolk, England. I bet if I asked you to name 3 cities in England, Suffolk would not be one of them if you're not, from the UK. But through YouTube and the internet, he was able to build up a massive following. We're talking millions and millions of subscribers to his YouTube channel, essentially utilizing the most recent Minecraft wave. And if you don't know what that is, basically on YouTube, about every 5 years, as the younger generations come up, there's this massive wave of viewership on YouTube, specifically in the Minecraft category. If you're a Minecraft creator, you have the ability to garner millions of fans and do millions of views, specifically making Minecraft content on the internet. And that kind of just happened in this most previous wave, and wilbursoot is one of the primary beneficiaries of that particular wave. And Shelby Shubble, she's also a beneficiary of that particular wave, and she's essentially part of that community, and that's kind of how they found each other. But when we're talking about dynamics and when we're talking about power and influence and the contrast of that, obviously Wilbur is exponentially more popular and well known than Shubble. And so obviously that there is going to be an element there of which Shubble is going to be attracted to Wilbur because he has the ability to provide additional recognition. There is the attraction factor that he's famous, that he's making a lot of money. Maybe they actually got along. Maybe their personalities just gelled. Shubble, she lives in Los Angeles, California. Now, with wilbursoot living in the UK, obviously there's going to be that consistent long distance aspect to their relationship. And take it from somebody that has tried to do the long distance relationship specifically with somebody in Los Angeles whilst being in the UK. It's not the best type of situation, and I'm assuming that's primarily one of the largest reasons why this didn't work out. However, a year after the conclusion of this relationship, Shubble did a live stream on Twitch and she essentially exposed Wilbur. It seemed like the primary intention from Shubble in this live stream was to make girls potentially like her aware of the risks, of the problems that could be associated with pursuing somebody like Wilbur. And she explained all of the details of the problems of their relationships and all of his reprehensible actions, allegedly, essentially to warn people that this is things that you could deal with and that you need to identify these things and consider ending the relationship or leaving the relationship to protect yourself from being abused or taken advantage of. So let's talk about what these allegations are. Conveniently, I have them officially summarized in front of me. So at the start of the relationship, Wilbur disclosed that he was into biting. He essentially told her that he didn't want her to look back on the relationship and see the biting as abuse. And so this was essentially disclosing that from the beginning. And biting was a consistent activity in their relationship. On occasion, he would bite her too hard, but it seemed to her at the time like it was a genuine mistake. And this happened more than often, so they came up with a safe word to essentially kind of control the unwanted escalation of the biting beyond what was acceptable for her, right? So apparently Wilbur bit her as a joke in front of people in public to the point where she was physically hurt and she was screaming in pain. And I'm curious about who might have witnessed this, but apparently this happened, and she claims that she would lie to her friends saying that she was not hurt and that she was not being abused and that she was okay with it to essentially protect Wilbur and to defend their relationship in public. So at a certain point in the relationship, Shubble confronted Wilbur and basically told him that she wanted the biting to stop, that it was too much and that she didn't want it to continue. And Wilbur basically responded to her that it's not going to stop. That is how he is, and that's just how it's going to be. So she said from that point, things got worse, that he would bite her and she would use the safe word, and he would basically take that as a sign to bite even harder. She described this as that he seemed to enjoy causing her pain beyond the point of which she had tried to stop him from continuing. And then she goes back to the beginning of the relationship. She says that wilbursoot love bombed her at the start, claiming that he wanted marriage, claiming that he wanted children, and towards the end or the middle of the relationship, or at some point, he somewhat expressed ideals that were against that, and she confronted him about the fact that he had essentially been dishonest with her at the beginning of the relationship, and Wilbur came up with a number of explanations to justify his changing of his mind, or to justify the change of his ideals that didn't seem consistent or coherent with some of the things that he was saying before, or the things that he was saying at that particular time, that he would say something and then say something that would conflict what he had just said. And so obviously, as we already mentioned, the relationship had a long distance aspect to it, and she complained that he essentially prioritized other things like his career and opportunities and his friends over her. And so even at times where they would be together, he would still prioritize other things. And apparently he claimed that he only cared about making more money and becoming more famous and gaining more fans. And all of that was a priority to her, essentially, that the relationship wasn't important to him. And then she basically claimed that towards the end of their relationship, he almost intentionally engaged in activities that would hurt her, that would abuse her, that he specifically intended to push her away, that he claimed that he resented her. And towards the end of their relationship, things got really bad. Things progressed to a point that was well beyond what was acceptable. And then this is something that was really crazy for me, because obviously I feel like, girls' hygiene is like one of the biggest things. But she claimed that he lived in filth, that he was very unclean in his habits. She claimed that he did not take care of himself or his surroundings or his environment very well, and that she wanted to help him and that she wanted to try and rehabilitate him, which is obviously something that we know is a very consistent theme in relationships. And she claims that she was paying for more things than he was, and that he would essentially state that he would pay her back or that he would take care of certain financial obligations, but she would end up taking care of those things and that he would never pay her back. And that was costing her more. And obviously he was in a better financial position than her. But this was something that was essentially a form of abuse that she believes also occurred in the relationship. And then she claims that when they broke up, or when she broke up with him rather, that he threw hundreds of dollars of her things away, which is just not very nice. And then to summarize everything, Shubble basically stated that she believes that Wilbur is dangerous and that she wanted to warn other girls who might potentially get involved with him in the future that they should stay away from him, that he's basically bad news. So obviously wilbursoot posted a X response or apology to Shelby's allegations, and we're going to get into that. But real quick, I just wanted to point something out, because technically Shubble never mentioned Wilbur by name in her allegation livestream PSA, and wilbursoot never mentioned Shubble in his apology. So there's going to be at least, and my estimate is like 20% of people are going to look at that and have no idea who either of them are talking about. And it's not funny, but it's just like, this is the Minecraft community. That's pretty much their primary fan base. So I thought that was pretty wild. Just throw that out there. Anyway, Wilbur's apology. In the past week, a series of allegations have been made over my conduct from an ex-girlfriend. I want to emphasize that although I feel it fair to offer my perspective, this person's feelings are completely valid. I've taken my time sharing this statement as I wanted to process and respond respectfully, and with the hope to gain a deeper understanding for the situation. During our relationship's final months, I regrettably became slobbish, disrespectful, and selfish. These actions caused a lot of pain to my ex-girlfriend, and I've since sought therapy to address these behaviors, making significant lifestyle changes to rectify my past actions. I've come to realize how much my past behavior hurt this person, but I truly, compassionately believe I've made great strides from the person I once was, and hope I can continue to grow and improve on this trajectory, which is a great start. I mean, he didn't mention Shubble, but that is somewhat of a sincere apology. He's acknowledged that he made some mistakes. He has stated that he's looking for help and that he's making improvements incrementally in different areas of his life. So that's decent. But then we have to move on to the second part of this apology now. You know, it's one of those things to where when somebody makes an apology, that should be it. You did this, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done it, end of story. But when you make an apology and then you try and make an excuse, that somewhat tarnishes the integrity of the apology in itself as a whole. So he goes on to say, the allegation of abuse, particularly in the form of biting, deeply shocked me. Throughout our relationship, I understood from our numerous conversations and text message exchanges on the subject that this behavior was consensual, playful, and reciprocally enjoyed. I truly believe that those personal message exchanges reflect mutual affection and understanding. Out of respect for her, I choose not to publish them, and I emphasize my perspective is not shared to diminish or invalidate anyone's feelings. Instead, I share it in the hope that I can offer a genuine, fair, and relevant insight into my understanding of the situation. While I may perceive our interactions differently, I recognize that this person has processed and expressed feelings of hurt. I want to extend my sincerest apologies for any pain I've caused. I am fully committed to understanding and addressing her concerns going forward. I hope my perspective sheds light on this situation without detracting from its message. I am dedicated to earning and maintaining the trust of those around me and hope I continue to be held to these high standards I wish to attain and maintain. It's very clear that he leans really hard into this affirmation that I have conversations with Shubble, or this person, because he doesn't actually reference to her, that shows that she was consenting to the biting. However, see, this is the thing. We will never know specifically what happened. Only the two of them will, and that's generally how these things go. But from what Shubble claims is that she told him, stop, and he continued. When a girl says no, when she says stop, you're supposed to stop, and that's the way that it's been. That's the way that it should be. So anything beyond that is not acceptable, and there is no justification for continuing beyond the use of a safe word. The whole point of a safe word is to keep things safe, and that's just the bottom line. I feel like there's so many different avenues of which I could take to wrap this video, but I can only really give you guys one. Shelby Shubble is at this point a 30-year-old mature woman, and hindsight is 2020. And even from what I have seen from her own PSA video, looking back on her relationship that, you know, technically she started when she was 28 or 29, but looking back on that relationship, she can see that she made a lot of mistakes. She can see that there were a lot of warning signs that she potentially overlooked. And I think that one of the things that made her even more upset about the situation and made it more difficult to get over and to move past or to deal with was the fact that she'd, even prior to that relationship, been in a relationship where she was abused, and she'd had experiences, negative experiences from other relationships in the past that she had essentially learned from or needed to learn from. So it's one of those situations where I think that if I were her, I would have genuinely felt compelled to make a video, to do a live stream, to tell other girls, to inform younger girls that, hey, look, I have made this mistake, but not only have I made this mistake, I've made this mistake repeatedly, and I want to influence you to not make the same mistakes that I have. And even beyond that, making a video, it's like writing a journal entry where you're specifically making a record of the mistakes that you have made, because ultimately we have to live with the consequences of our choices, and ultimately everything is a choice. In a relationship, you have the ability to walk away, you have the ability to end it, and especially when you have so many different forms of justification. The guy's a slob, the guy's not treating you well, the guy's not respecting your boundaries, the guy's not paying for things that he said he would pay for, the guy's prioritizing so many things over you. You don't need to accept that. And this is another thing that I'll mention as well. I think that ultimately, when you look at a guy, we're using wilbursoot as an example, but 27-year-old wilbursoot from Suffolk, England, okay? Take away the followers, take away the subscribers, take away the money, okay? Would you accept that from this same person? And let's be completely honest, probably not. So it's not me trying to put the blame on anybody, but it's like when I look at this with my rational and logical brain, you know, if I were a girl, I would not subject myself to this kind of treatment and to this kind of abuse, but I'm not a girl and I'm not in that situation. And so I can understand that obviously there are many different other factors that go into this that might lead you to staying in this situation for much longer than you should do and accepting treatment from somebody that is unacceptable. One of the biggest things that I will say as well is that obviously hindsight is 2020. We don't have the ability to perceive ourselves in the way that other people would. We cannot look at ourselves in the mirror and see everything. It's just not possible. We idealize ourselves and our situations. That's definitely a fact of life. But don't hide things from other people. Communicate with other people about what's going on in your life. You know, girls Girls have friends, they have their mums, even guys. But don't hide these things, don't conceal them. If there's anything that's happening in a relationship, whether it's good or whether it's bad, whether it's questionable, whether you don't know what to make of it, you need to communicate these things to other people, and at the very least, they will be able to give you somewhat of a rational, informed response. They'll be able to provide you with insight on whether what's going on is acceptable or not. And that's the bigger picture.